Welcome to KenCham TV. I'm your host for this episode, Ralph. Today we have with us Martin Desaultais from DFDL law firm here in Vietnam. And the topic for today is actually law in Vietnam, but also spreading across the Mekong region. So first of all, welcome Martin. Thanks for coming to join us.
And thank you for hosting me, Ralph.
More than welcome. Let's start off first of all by how long have you been in Vietnam?
Been for quite a while. In fact, in the region, I've arrived 15 years ago in '99 in Hanoi, working as an intern. In fact, when I arrived for a French law firm 15 years ago, and then I've moved a bit to Cambodia for a few years, and then I'm here in Saigon for since we established here in 2006, 2007. So the last 7-8 years I've been here in Saigon.
So to use the politically incorrect term, you're an expert on the Indochina region. Okay.
I would say qualify now more an expert in the Mekong region.
Mekong region,
Yeah.
exactly. You're going to hear that term a lot today.
Yeah.
15 years, what do you like about living in Vietnam?
Many things. First, from a professional perspective, I come from Canada, from Montreal. What I've been able to do here from a professional perspective, I would never been able to do this in Canada. It's a new region, it's opening up, there's growth, there's opportunities everywhere, and if you seize them, you can progress very, very quickly, which would have been difficult in a more settled market like Canada or even the US. So from professional perspective, I said, huge market opportunities here you have in terms, and you can just seize them if you have the impetus and the courage to seize them. They're there for you.
So I mean, the overall opportunity, the strength of development based on hard work, on being intuitive. Okay. You mentioned you came from Montreal. I'm just down Highway 401 in Toronto. So we know the market very well. Everything's very organized, very established. What are the challenges or what are the difficulties that you find working in Vietnam or living in Vietnam for that matter?
I mean, it's changed in the last 15 years, but definitely, like you note, in comparison to Montreal or Toronto, when I have a lawyer who's coming here and telling him, look here, it's nice to read the law, it's nice to read the jurisprudence, but you're halfway there to advise your client. You need to look at the practice, and the practice is changing all the time. So it's much less established. You need to be ready to move faster and have a bit of more flexible mind in terms of how you do business here and how you advise your client. So that's one of the big challenges. Some are able to go over that challenge, but some simply cannot, and then they tend to go back to Australia or Europe or North America. So that's one of the main challenges I've seen. It's a moving scenery all the time, and you need to be polyvalent and a bit agile within that scenery.
It's the word opaque comes up quite a lot. In other words, the law is quite opaque. There's a bit of a lack of transparency, but as you also say, a lot of the law has just not been developed yet, and everything's on a case-by-case basis very often, isn't it?
Correct. You rarely advise a client without talking to the authorities and say, okay, this is the law, this understand we can do, but then you go sound it out with the authorities. Okay, my client wants to do this. Is it possible? Can he get the license? That's the only way, one of the only way to advise properly your client.
Okay. Now, DFDL has been here for quite a number of years, probably one of the pioneers within the region. What do you see as your unique sales proposition? What makes you different from other legal firms?
This year we're celebrating our 20th anniversary in the region. We started in Laos, Cambodia, then Vietnam and Thailand. So that's already, that being in the region for 20 years gives us a huge amount of insight and practical knowledge in comparison to firms who've arrived after. So that's just have been building up that expertise at the different link with the different authorities and the knowledge of the legal framework. That's a big distinction. Second thing is the regional footprint. We were the first to establish a full Mekong practice, and now we're in line to be probably fully integrated Mekong practice from Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. So we have helped notably a lot of Vietnamese companies to establish elsewhere. And I think your company, your previous company was a good example of this, where we were able to assist people to expand within the Mekong region, and now it's more within the ASEAN. So footprint, that's a distinction that we have in terms of. Second thing, we're one of the only legal and tax integrated practice. You have these practices in Europe and North America. Here it's rare. So it's more the big four who do the tax and the law firm who do the legal, but we have a full integrated throughout the region. So we can offer, with a one-stop solution for cross-jurisdictional transaction or expansion in other countries, both on the legal side and the tax side.
Okay, fantastic. And as you said from personal experience, it is so important to, when you enter a market in this region, to partner with the right advisors, lawyers, tax people to get it right the first time. There's a lot of false starts, if you will, in this region. Okay. I want to shift things a little bit. In terms of, let's speak specifically about Vietnam here. In terms of some of the new laws and or decrees, as we call them here, what are some of the big things that are coming up, either towards the end of this year or early next year, that I think the audience would be quite keen on learning about?
I mean, there was a big change in a couple of weeks ago. National Assembly modified or revised 4 different laws, quite fundamental for foreign investors. So all of these laws, I understand, will come into force 1st of July 2015. So we have time to prepare, but there was a quite significant amendment of the enterprise law, of the law on investment, of the housing law, the real estate law. All big impact for foreign investors.
Let's talk about the enterprise law. Is there anything specific there that would be worthwhile sharing?
Yes, I mean there's many things worthwhile, but one big shift of philosophy is usually when you had a business, you were only allowed to do what you had in your line of business. Now it's reversed.
Scope of activity.
Exactly. Now it's reversed. Any enterprise can do any business if it's not prohibited or not conditional.
Oh wow!
So big change. It's a change in philosophy, in fact. Complete. We'll see how it works in terms of the implementation. It starts in July next year. But that is major shift of philosophy by the government.
That's an interesting one. For viewers who know Vietnam, you know that Vietnam has been in a little bit of a recession, and the government's doing a lot of things to try and, how shall I say, push the market forward. What's interesting is one of the reasons that Vietnam got into trouble was they started to follow the Korean chaebol model, where a shipbuilding company would also do advertising and build mobile phones. So it'll be very interesting to see if this is actually a positive or potentially a negative, because in Vietnam it's all about doing transactions, building businesses and whatever else, as opposed to building the core of what you should be doing. So I don't think you guys are going to get into entertainment and promotion and events, are you?
I don't think so.
No, okay, good.
We'll say in our core, but you're correct in that, is that it gives more flexibility, especially for domestic and foreign invested company. But I understand for the state-owned enterprises, the government has strictly asked them to come back to their core business. So I don't think it should be.
So this is more for
the private sector,
not the SOEs.
I think it's going to be applicable to everybody, but it's mainly will impact the private sector.
Okay, great. You mentioned a couple other key sectors and impacts.
Yeah, the second key sector is the real estate and the housing law. The big difference is they open up much more the market for foreign investor or foreign buyers for condominium and for houses. So they're liberalizing this. They had liberalized it a bit, and that they just rely much further. So somebody from outside with a certain level of quota or limit ceiling, like you have in Cambodia, like you have in Thailand, can buy now property here under a 50-50 renewable lease, 50 renewable lease, 50 years, and then you can renew it. So that again, big shift. It should help the real estate market, and it should help people who are living here to access easier the property market, and the also offshore investor to come here. And the big difference than before, for example, for somebody who lives here, is when you bought an apartment, you had to use it yourself. Now you're allowed to buy and to sublease it. So it's more shifting into an investment mode in the property business. So that also has been a major shift.
Are there going to, because put it this way, historically they've always talked about condominiums and apartments, yet the residential, i.e. the housing property market, there's some real wonderful things to own here. Will this law be abroad across any kind of property, or?
It's any kind of property, as long as it's been properly licensed to be able to self-perform. So including villa, including condominium.
Oh, okay, fantastic, fantastic.
So quite a big shift again, as you can see, in comparison to, especially for people who've been in Vietnam for so long. We know how they were step by step opening that market. Now we're at a further step, which is we say almost a giant leap here in Vietnam, passing from a very restrictive possibility for foreigners buying property to something much more liberal.
Again, it seems that a lot of these laws are to try and drive the economy, isn't it?
Definitely, all of them. The third one has been amended also, is the loan investment. Again, major changes. First, they're reducing the time of licensing from 45 days to 15 days. So once you apply and you properly apply, normally they should be able to grant a license now within 15 days instead of 45 days. So again, try to speed up, which is in line with their neighbors. Cambodia is looking at speeding up and putting everything on through web-based. Myanmar has just declared, I think last week, the MIC, the Myanmar Investment Committee, said we're going to accelerate the granting of license. So it's a trend in the region, so they're just following that trend, but it's a great improvement. We'll see in practice how it happens. And the second big change in terms of the investment law is that they made it much easier, or they clarified how you can buy minority stake in a Vietnamese company.
Oh, okay.
So it's going to be much easier now to do it.
Because before it had to be a JSC, a joint stock company, or whatever. Then you had to wait 3 years to change the board of direct, blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. So, well, what is it? Because that's quite interesting as well.
I mean, now when you buy a minority stake, it's like if a Vietnamese was buying a minority stake in the domestic company. Okay, so it's a simple share transaction. Okay, you don't need to go to a special regime, which you needed to go before. So that's a big clarification, which the foreign investor were seeking for many years. That's a quite big point, which should increase the number of transactions between foreign investor as minority strategic partner. So again, as you said, the objective of these major changes is to improve, I would say, the investment framework and facilitate investment within the economy.
The venture capitalists would be very happy with that one.
Probably. Hopefully not the vulture capital.
No. Well, what's the difference? No. I better be careful what I say. Is there anything in the docket that you think is actually going to take law backwards?
Frankly speaking, with these recent changes, it's going in a positive manner. The real question is the implementation. The aim is 1st of July 2015. It's both the underlying regulation that's needed to implement this, which is always very complex and very long to put in place in Vietnam. And second thing is the interpretation that the authorities will give to these new regulations. How liberal will they be in their interpretation, and how clear and transparent the law, the implementation regulation will be to facilitate all these new developments. That's the big question mark that everybody has on it.
Okay. Just again, switching gears a little bit here. You guys, as you said, you're in Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam. Do you have any plans on expansion?
We are also in Indonesia, Singapore, and Bangladesh. So we're and our objective is to finish the ASEAN network.
You're in all the wet markets.
Let's say we're specialists in emerging markets. Okay. So that's what we aim. Our next should be the Philippines. So we'll have a firm joining, probably in January, a firm joining the DFDL network.
I see. So like a merger, acquisition, or a partnership?
More partnership because of regulatory reason in Philippines, but it's going to be operationally integrated within DFDL. And the objective after that is finish Malaysia and finish Brunei, to have a full office. So with that, we should have 15 offices after that. And then our our expansion should be, we hope to finish this, let's say, end of 2015, early 2016. And then the next aim will probably be South Asia. So we're already in Bangladesh. We're the only foreign law firm in Bangladesh. But we're looking at Nepal also, Bhutan. We've done some work in Bhutan. Sri Lanka, maybe Afghanistan, Pakistan. So that would be our next, but we really want first to complete the first fully integrated network within the ASEAN region.
Fantastic, fantastic. As this is a CanCham TV, maybe feel free to say anything how you feel you can help CanCham members or Canadian companies considering coming into Vietnam or any of the other regions that you're in.
I mean, we're trying to be. I think lawyers now need to be a bit broader than lawyers. They need to be more counsel to their, and both counsel in terms of their law and regulation, tax, but also in terms of investment strategy. That's where we think we can help with our network, CanCham members, in two ways. A new CanCham members who's looking at the market here, where do they want to establish? So we had one client, for example, where they wanted to establish their technological hub for the ASEAN, and so we did a market survey throughout ASEAN and say, okay, what's the best place, what are the tax rate, how it's easy to establish, how it's easy to export from that market. That was the first phase we did to help that Canadian company to establish here, and they decided to choose Vietnam, and then from there we help them with establishing their company here, and then they're looking elsewhere now. So we're helping them to branch out to different. So that's the first, a new company that comes in and says, where should I establish?
So in a way, assisting in terms of a consultancy with respect to market landscaping.
Exactly.
Opportunity, costs, so on and so forth.
Exactly. And we still concentrate mostly on the legal and tax side, and we let, I would say, the client who knows his business much better establish more the commercial aspects of it, but a broad market entry assistance.
Okay.
Second thing is for existing company or existing CanCham. So if we help a number of CanCham company who are established and quite strong here in Vietnam, start to look out. So some went established in Singapore, some are looking at Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos, and beyond now. So Indonesia, Philippines. So that's the second way. So it's well-established company who want then to expand, and we help them. Especially what we're seeing more and more now in the manufacturing is they're starting to expand to set up supply lines or production line throughout ASEAN. So with the ASEAN Economic Community, with the custom duty going down, it's quite easy now to trade goods between the different ASEAN countries. So we see company establishing, for example, in 2 or 3 countries, and the end product finishes here and then is exported out. So that's I would say strategize on how to establish production line within these different countries. That's another way we are assisting existing CanCham members in their expansion of that production line and their geographical expansion throughout ASEAN.
You mentioned, I think, probably the hottest point moving forward into 2015, which is the ASEAN free trade.
Yeah.
Any comment, insight in terms of, with this, how you can help your prospective clients?
I think what we can help them is say how to look at this, because that's a question all of our clients. So what will it change for me? Okay, and we usually said, okay, you want to enter a country, you look at this. There's an additional layer now when you want to enter ASEAN market or expand in ASEAN, is to look at the ASEAN agreement. There's 3 or 4 very important agreements that you need to look at. Is the custom duty agreement, where all custom duties are going down from 0 to 5% on 95% of the goods. If you need to be sure your goods are within that 95% if you want to start doing export or this production line. Second thing is the ASEAN Comprehensive Investment Agreement, which views as to liberalizing and enhancing the investment throughout ASEAN. So these are 2 very big agreements. But there's a new layer of where you need to look at. So the free trade agreement also between ASEAN and the different countries. So a layer that you need to look at, which before you didn't need to look at, because people were focusing on Vietnam.
But it could certainly, I mean, put it this way, it adds a little bit of potential confusion, but the end benefit can be considerably greater because of the new laws and what they actually do with reference to prioritizing certain sectors within certain countries, isn't it?
Definitely. it adds a layer of complication. That's why our clients are saying, okay, what does it change? And they don't really know. We're trying to do some research on this and publication on this to try to help people understand what's going to be impact for their business. But you're right, once they understand this and they do this strategic mapping of production line, for example, it can be extremely beneficial. Starting a product in some certain country where they have the technical expertise or the labor, and finishing it in a country where allows you to export, for example, to the EU or to Canada duty-free. Understand? So all that strategic mapping on production line, it's a bit more complicated, but definitely if you do it well, it will be quite beneficial both for duties and for tax strategy also, because the tax rates are different in different countries.
On a final one, thank you very much, Martin. How do you say, in the market research industry, we always say, talking about finding that one nugget of truth, that one nugget of insight. Is there any one thing that you can tell our viewers that could help them or provide them with insight if they have legal issues or requirements?
The main thing, I'd say, if we talk about Vietnam specifically, each country are quite different. If we talk about Vietnam, first, and you know it as well as me, is they need to be patient. Okay? Patient both in terms of on the legal aspects, licensing, everything. It takes much more time than Canada, for example. And in terms of developing the market here. I've rarely seen somebody be able to establish a company quickly here and being able to start being very beneficial. You come here and you establish, and you have to have a medium and long-term view, both in terms of how you set up and in terms of how you approach the market. It takes time to penetrate the market. There's already many people here, so it's very competitive. So definitely, don't think within 2 years that you'll be fully established and fully operational and profitable. Yes, established, probably operational, but it will take a bit time before having a success. Most enterprises that I see here that have success took 5 to 10 years and had long-term manager who knew well the country and run their business for that.
I think very good point there is continuity.
Yeah.
The continuity of people, staff, so on and so forth. Martin, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Tune in next week when we have the next episode of CanCham TV. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.